everyone. This is Kathy Volkman, Curator of Artifacts at the Marathon County Historical Society in Wausau, Wisconsin, coming to you today with another installment in our typewriter series, Whoever Would Have Thought. Today we're going to be talking about the evolution of manual desktop typewriters, and we will be joined again today by our volunteer in our collections department, Russ Forbes, who has been researching these.
Typewriting in the commercial field got a start back in the 1870s, mid 70s. It became a common office piece of equipment in 1880. Our first typewriter that we have is this wonderful Smith Premier, 1890 to 1895, is as close as we can get to the manufacture date. It had 7 rows of keys, which is very unusual typewriter. It had separate keys for capital letters and the black keys and the numbers, and the white keys were the small case letters and special characters. So there was no shift key because all the keys were done separately. This ended up being a keyboard of 76 keys, and this enabled Smith Premier to actually provide different key layouts for other languages that would have more than 26 letters. One interesting fact was that they had a typewriter set up for the Siamese alphabet, which was 70 characters, so it was quite the machine. It was a very ornately designed machine. It had these wonderful details in the casting, bronzed casting, and cattails and flowers. One unusual thing about these early typewriters is the method of typing on the paper. These were what we call an upstrike machine. The type bars would be hanging down, and when you press a key, they flip up and type on the bottom side of the paper roll here, the carriage. So the typewriter, or the typist, never saw what they were typing until you got several lines into it. So it was a very frustrating machine that way. Our next machine is a Remington Shoals No. 2 typewriter, and it had come down to just 4 rows of keys, otherwise called a 4-bank machine. Again, it had a very elaborate casting. It had pillars and decorations. You can be forgiven for thinking that it might look like a building because the exterior of this machine was designed by an architect. And he was the architect for the 1893 Chicago World's Fair of the art building. So he was very used to doing that. It still had the same upstrike design, again, the typist didn't see what they were doing. Well, we now come over to our Oliver machines. And Mr. Oliver invented a machine where the type bars are on the top of the machine. And so when you pressed a key, the type bar came down onto this top surface so the typist could actually read what was written a little bit, just a little space, but it was better than nothing. It was such an important thing, they marketed it as the visible typewriter, and it was their logo for all of their time. It was a very robust machine. We have one in 1905, this is the number 3, and the number 9, which is getting to be about one of the last ones they built, was in 1929. A different type of approach was used to type that was developed by Underwood. Actually, various people developed it, but Underwood collected all of this. This is a front strike machine. That the key bars are down here in a classical arrangement, and they flip up and type on this surface. And the typist can now see the entire typed line, and it was much improved. This is the Underwood number 5 and standard number 5, and it became kind of the classic model for all typewriters that were following beyond. the Underwood, the number 5 allowed the Underwood to become almost the top manufacturer of typewriters in the U.S., and they persisted for many decades. And in fact, our other typewriters that we have are Underwoods as well. You started getting large collections of typists in a room banging away on these typewriters. They generated a lot of noise. The earlier typewriters all had open sides and open key surfaces, and so noise was a real problem. So they invented a noiseless. So this is the Underwood noiseless, and it basically enveloped the typing area with a lot of sound deadening surfaces. Basically, it looks like armor plate on top of here. The sides of the machine are now closed so that you try and contain the sound. That was in the late 30s. The last machine that we have in our collection is 1949. It's an Underwood Rhythm Touch, and it is looking like a typewriter that you might have seen almost any time in the latter part of the 1900s. It had aluminum aerodynamic looking decorations. It was really trying to look what we call very modern at that point. The interesting story about the typewriters is that they are now a vanishing breed. The last manufacturer of typewriters closed their office doors in 2011 because they could no longer compete with computers and printers.
Okay, and that does it for our look at manual desktop typewriters with Russ. Thank you very much. If you have any questions about any of the typewriters that Russ showed us today, just leave them in the comments below. Let us know if you have any interesting stories of your own about learning to type or little typing mishaps or snafus that you've had in your life. Until next time, thank you. See you later.